No mai haere mai, ko Gordon Harcourt tōku ingoa. G'day, kia ora, I'm Gordon Harcourt. I'm the communications lead for the construction sector accord. Welcome to today's webinar, all about innovation. This is the latest in our Towards High Performance webinar series. Now, the New Zealand construction sector has a productivity problem. We all know that. One stat to show it. Over nearly 25 years, back to 96, construction second highest ranked in terms of GDP growth, but ninth ranked for productivity growth. So how do we get productivity higher? Well, one word obviously is a big part of that: innovation. So for a productive, profitable sector, we've got to embrace new methods. Yes, there is cool stuff here and there, but it struggles to break through. We need an ecosystem where new tools, products, practices, technologies are constantly being developed, tested, shared, and widely adopted within the industry. Now, today we have got people who are doing all of those things. We've got Kiwirail, Kāinga Ora, Offsite Design, and Qorox, 3D printed concrete pioneers. Before we hear from you all, here is a reminder of what the Accord is all about. Construction touches us all in some way, and its success is crucial for a better Aotearoa. The Accord was launched in April 2019 to try and address the many issues affecting the sector.
The Construction Sector Accord is the first step in creating a strong partnership between government and industry.
And the partnership is to create a high-performing construction sector for a better New Zealand. The Accord has big goals: increase productivity, raise capability, improve resilience, restore confidence, pride and reputation. The Accord's work is about driving long-term culture change, from increasing diversity in construction to reducing carbon emissions. We want to see better business performance, better leadership, better health and safety culture, including mental health, fairer risk allocation. We want to see a safer, more successful, more sustainable construction sector. By working together, we can achieve that vision. So, innovation. And first up today, Derek Jennings, and he is the Digital Engineering Program Manager at Kiwirail. Kia ora, Derek.
Yeah, kia ora. Great to be here, and thanks for having me.
So, Kiwirail's digital engineering program, it's on a mission to deliver various innovations to help digitise Kiwirail and its supply chain. For construction, it's about increasing collaboration and reducing construction risks on site. Firstly, Derek, tell us a bit more about how the program is being used to drive innovation within Kiwirail.
Yeah, so obviously Kiwirail is currently under a watershed period of investment, and we've got a mountain of work to do in a reasonably short amount of time. In order to do that, we have to be a bit more innovative about some of the things we do. And so that's really driven us to scale up some of the initiatives within Kiwirail at the pace we're doing them. So the DE program is kind of the home for good ideas, and we make that accessible to everyone, all different parts of our business. So we've got our capital works business and other people in our business that touch projects, but often might not get as much input as usual. We make sure that we bring them on the journey, and if they've got smart ideas, we bring that to the table and into the D program and see where they can be scaled. So for us, a good example of that is we have a lot of risk when we get on site and we're working in the rail corridor. So because it's a live environment, we get very limited access. And so when we're in that environment, we have to be onto it and get the work done in the time required. So one of the key things we've done is we've invested in a collaborative environment called Revisto. And so that enables all of our design teams and internal design teams to come into the one space, coordinate their design in the digital world. And for us, that reduces the risks in the physical world when we're actually on site. So it lets us be more in control and gives us more confidence about what's happening in the design and how that's being coordinated. So the other part of that is Kiwirail's taken the kind of bold step to provide all of the licenses for that software. So for us, we provide licenses to both our internal teams and our external teams, because we don't want that to be a barrier to people having access to the information. So that's 3D and 2D information. And for us, that means a license is a lot cheaper than some of the cost of when things go wrong on site. So yeah, it's a good example of kind of the things we're doing.
Now, I've seen the video on this one, your Digital Shields project. This is seriously cool. Tell me more about it.
Yeah, sure. So the Digital Shields was something that came out of the BIM pilot. And so the BIM pilot for us was where we kind of started doing digital engineering, and that was the sort of genesis of the digital engineering program. So again, speaks to we need to be more productive, but also we don't have a lot of access to the rail corridor, and we need to keep our people safe. So the way the technology works is it brings together a bunch of different things: BIM models, GPS, and the digger's computer and hydraulic system. The digger knows where it is on site. It connects to the GPS, and what we've done is we've modeled 3D modeled digital shields that cover the safe zones in the rail corridor. When the digger moves around, if it is to come in contact with that digital shield, it then locks out the hydraulics, meaning that the digger can't come in contact with the rail corridor. So that's something that was trialled on the Trentham to Upper Hutt project in Wellington. And over the last 12 months, we've been going through the processes of all the documentation and all the other bits and pieces to scale that up and make it part of our BAU for our business. So the next two big projects that are currently using it are the Plympton upgrades down in Wellington, and then the Wiri to Key Park project in Auckland.
So what are the key outcomes for you?
Yeah, I guess everything we did under the BIM pilot proved the value of scaling the D program across our capital works portfolio. So for us, it was there was kind of four key objectives. It was store data in one place, and that led to us developing our own common data environment. Reduce risks in construction, so that was where our collaborative environment, Rivisto, came into play, and that's sort of what I was speaking to around, coordinate it in the digital world before we go into the physical world. Produce really good as-builts. So we know that when we're doing capital works projects, we've got a massive opportunity to capture some really good data about our assets that will be used well beyond those projects. So typically the industry is not so great at capturing as-built data and handing that over to asset owners, and that's just for a number of reasons. So we're really working in that space to develop that information.
Why is it important for agencies like Kiwirail to lead innovation and change?
Yeah, so there's a couple of aspects to that. Ultimately, someone like us, Kiwirail, we're a state-owned enterprise. We're spending Kiwis' monies, and so we want to do that in a way that uses that money efficiently and gets the right outcomes. The other side to it is being an agency and a client, we have the ability and the privilege and the responsibility to kind of set the speed and direction for innovation, and the ability to work with the supply chain collaboratively to get the right outcomes. We know that when clients procure things in a certain way and ask for change, the industry really responds. So it's something that we've really got to own, I think, as agencies.
Derek, what's next for Kiwirail in the innovation space?
Yeah, so there's a few things on the go. We will continue to do the fundamentals better. So that's essentially getting more consistent and accurate data about our assets so we can do some smart things with that data. But there are a few things we have on the go that will kind of change the way people interact with an asset. One of those key things is gamification. So we're doing a lot of work around bringing information into gaming environments so that people can interact with it in a different way. We have a lot of stakeholders, both internal and external, that have to be consulted with and need to be consulted with to get their input into things. And traditionally, they would often get a technical drawing and they might not be from a technical background. And so their input might get lost in translation, or what is being asked of them might get lost in translation. And so that can result in things not coming to fruition and challenges later on. So one thing we've been trialing with the IREX project down in Wellington is we've brought the design into a gaming engine, and then we're using that gaming engine to interact with different people and show them design. We can put things on the fly in the environment. In there, we can put in temporary roads and cranes and things like that and show them what the impact would be while we're doing that and get their feedback on that.
Kia ora, Derek. Hey, the digital shield things is really cool. Search up Kiwirail and beacons to have a look. Oh my God, I actually just said search up. Blame our kids for that. By the way, here at the Accord, we're working with Kiwirail on an asset owners forum. And this is dedicated to creating consistency with digital change and data requirements across the sector. Data, your choice. Forum includes groups such as Wakatahi, University of Canterbury, Let's Get Wellington Moving, and Auckland Transport. And look, more generally, we're really pushing that sort of peer-to-peer horizontal learning network. That is the best way to learn. Anyway, next up, Johan Betts from Offsite Design. Kia ora, Johan.
Thanks for the introduction. Great to be here and looking forward to sharing some thoughts about offsite manufacturing and offsite construction.
So, Offsite Design, a leader in designing and manufacturing prefabricated timber buildings from small residential to multi-storey commercial. Firstly, Johan, offsite construction, why is it so important for New Zealand?
Yeah, prefabrication and offsite construction is really just, the way how we're using the terms, it's really just a catch-all term for a whole bunch of methods, systems, techniques, technologies that allow us to build away from site and assemble quickly on site. And that means that in the way how we're using these terms, we're covering a huge spectrum of types of construction. Panels, open and closed, 3D volumetric modules, whole buildings, and across all the materials, so concrete, timber, steel, etc. And that means it's actually quite difficult to talk with people about prefabrication and offsite construction. But what the common denominator is that essentially we're building away from site and trying to assemble quickly on site. The goals are raising productivity in construction, reducing project risk, increasing quality and precision that we can achieve, and improved health and safety. So that's and some of the other benefits that come with offsite construction. So that's really why it's relevant for New Zealand: is raise productivity in construction, raise quality in the built environment, and improved health and safety. Yeah.
Tell us about some of the projects you've got underway at the moment.
So Offsite Design is a consultancy, as an office. We specialize in prefabricated timber. And there's two big streams of work. There's residential and there's commercial. And in the residential space, that could be, that's typically light timber framed buildings from the family home right through to medium density. And our job there is to bridge the gap between the designers and the prefabricators and or contractors, builders on site. So we take the design documentation and we break a design into panels or pods or chunks that can be prefabricated, optimize that documentation, produce a fabrication model, and then produce the documentation for the factory. So that's shop drawings and or machine files to drive robots. So that's in the residential space. In the commercial space, the projects we're working on, they're typically mass timber, multi-story. So that's typically 3-4 story public buildings. There's a number that we've involved in at the moment down here on the South Island. So that's the Ashburton Civic Centre being built in Ashburton at the moment, Polytech building down in Dunedin, and another mass timber building that's going through that process at the moment, through that pre-construction process that's going to be built on the Ag Research Lincoln campus. But one thing to point out really is that Offsite Design, we are sort of, on most of these projects, getting involved after the fact that the design has been finalized. And now the role we play then is that we coordinate and we find the details that are not producible in the factory or not buildable on site, and we help the prefabricator and the contractor through that. So that's the point I'd like to make, is that very few projects in New Zealand are actually optimized for this offsite manufacturing and offsite construction process, and that's where New Zealand needs to do some work. Other types of work that Offsite Design gets involved in is consulting to the prefabricators, so essentially helping prefabricators get into prefabrication. So if there's a prefabricator and they want to start making things offsite, then we can do some consulting on their building system, help firm up that system, and even sort of help with tailoring a factory around that. Yeah.
So offsite construction, still relatively new here. What's got in the way? What sort of barriers are there to seeing more of it?
One of the biggest barriers is really that offsite projects really need to be optimized for manufacture and assembly. It's called DFMA, Design for Manufacture and Assembly. And it's really something that can't happen after design is finalized. It really needs to happen from day one, during the earliest design stages, to make sure that a design is A, producible and in the factory, and B, it's optimized for assembly. And it's impossible really to overstress the importance of that. It's also something that typically designers, architects, engineers can't do by themselves. So DFMA, Design for Manufacture and Assembly, it's really a collaborative process involving a contractor and supplier early. Yeah, so that's a big barrier, that the projects that are being prefabricated in New Zealand, very few of them are really optimized for true DFMA. Another one is really, and that goes really hand in hand with the first point, is the procurement. And that's if design of a project, of a prefab, of an offsite project is separated from the construction, contractually separated from that, then it's really impossible for that manufacturing or offsite assembly know-how to flow through to the design stages. So instead of separating design from construction contractually, offsite projects thrive in procurement methods where design and delivery are integrated. Design build contracts, collaborative alliances, early contract and supply involvement. These are sort of the models to get around that, to make sure that projects are informed early with that manufacturing know-how and that assembly know-how that is required for these types of projects. So essentially, projects need to be optimized for prefabrication during the design stage, and that's sort of the biggest barrier. That's really particularly true for the commercial multi-story type projects. In the residential space, for the family home or medium density, where we see a bit of movement in New Zealand at the moment, one of the barriers is really a lack of standards. And I need to explain that, because by that I don't mean, to be clear, I don't mean any standardized floor plans or standardized architecture, but what I mean is a lack of OSM systems that are being applied here. So there's a smorgasbord of OSM systems out there that the industry has come up with and is trying to push. But because there's quite a variety out there, it's actually quite difficult for large developers and designers to optimize for one or the other. And if they do, they automatically almost eliminate the other ones. So what really New Zealand would benefit from is a standardization in this space. And an analogy that I'd like to use there is, if you're thinking about the way how New Zealand houses are built at the moment, like timber framed using NZS 3604 as a standard, in some ways we require the same thing, just an OSM version of that. If we do 3604 type residential buildings as an offsite fabricated process, well, what does OSM 3604 look like? There's no need for New Zealand to have 10 different types of approaches to closed light timber frame panels. In fact, it just confuses designers, complicates it for councils, and just complicates things. So, but again, to be clear, I'm not proposing to standardize architecture and floor plans here. No one wants that. No one wants cookie cutter. I'm proposing to standardize the OSM systems behind this typology, light timber frame, for example, as an example. Yeah.
And this is, I guess, a step in the right direction. Last year, the government passed a bill streamlining the consenting process for off-site modular building. New voluntary certification scheme where manufacturers can who meet certain requirements can access certificates that cover their complete design and manufacturing process. So will that make a difference for businesses like yours?
Oh yeah, the modular component manufacturer scheme. So definitely a step in the right direction, and quite a big achievement for a small country like New Zealand. And actually, at that point, I'd like to give a bit of credit there to Scott Fisher and Offsite NZ, or formerly Prefab NZ, just for doing excellent work, sort of corralling the industry and doing some lobbying there with the government. So definitely a good step in the right direction. What it essentially allows prefabricators to do is to certify their systems, their processes, and receive consent based on certificates for these on their projects, rather than having to go through consenting and design on every one of their projects and getting every panel or module inspected by building inspectors. So that's good. What it allows is every prefabricator to essentially certify their systems. What it doesn't address is one of the barriers I've mentioned in the previous questions, and that is that broad smorgasbord of systems we have out there. So in a next step, New Zealand would benefit from a bit more standardization in that space, and that really goes then back to that point of standardization I've made before. But overall, definitely a good step in the right direction. And I haven't really seen that come through to industry, and I think the bill is still, or the content is still in consultation phase. But I'm looking forward to see who's picking it up, this certification scheme, and see the benefits of it.
So, what's your advice for others who are looking to move into off-site manufacturing?
Yeah, so there's a number of various parties involved, I guess. So advice to contractors and builders is, in particular, the ones of the commercial mass timber structures, is get involved early. Make sure that the project you're signing up for is really optimized for DFMA and is well coordinated, and get involved there. If you're unsure about that, if the design is finalized and no prefabricator or the project hasn't been optimized for DFMA, then you're really just signing up for a black box, and who knows how risky and difficult this is going to be to pull off as an offsite project. So that's to the contractors. Get involved. Make sure that your projects are optimized for DFMA, for manufacture and assembly. Advice to prefabricators is optimize or develop your product from product to process. So instead of setting up a great big factory and then trying to work out what you can do with it, it's really the correct way to go about it is really the other way around. Identify a product, clearly define that product, clearly develop a system that you want to pursue, and then, and only then, you can really tailor the factory around that, really from product to process. So that's my advice for prefabricators. And finally, government OSM, offsite construction, offsite manufacture, really is an excellent route to increase productivity in building and construction. What's important there is that the procurement reflects the needs of these types of projects, that integrated delivery that I've hinted at, so that these projects are conceived in a design build type environment where the designs get optimized for offsite. Prefabricators will require continuity of demand for their factories. Government has a role to play there in terms of providing some continuity of demand, some forward planning certainty for these prefabricators. And finally, advice for government is to help with some of the standardization that I think is relevant, that OSM 3604 that I've hinted at. By standardizing some of these systems, we would gather more critical capacity and momentum rather than fragmenting the OSM landscape into these niche boutique solutions that each struggle on their own. Again, this is standardizing systems, not floor plans. Yeah. So yeah, but otherwise, offsite is an excellent way to increase productivity, reduce risk on projects, and increase the quality as well of our built environment. So yeah.
Oh, kia ora, Johan. Some pretty exciting stuff in there. Staying with offsite, but from a designer and builder to a big client, Kāinga Ora. Kia ora, Rowan Bush.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm really pleased to be part of this.
So, Rowan, why is Kāinga Ora investing in offsite and prefabricated construction?
So there's lots of different ways to answer that question, but let me start off by saying that as New Zealand's largest housing provider, Kāinga Ora Homes and Communities really has a government mandate to lead change in the construction industry. So that means that we must be really at the forefront of understanding where the innovation and the progressive actions and opportunities which will enable us to build more homes are, and to trial those and see if we can get those benefits and then share what we learn from that with others in the industry. I think the wider context is that, and you may be aware of this through the media, that the current waiting list for public housing is at a record high. So that means there's about 25,000 people who are on MSD's housing register at the moment. So we desperately need innovation for Kāinga Ora to deliver more quality homes, particularly at a faster rate, and homes that really deliver a high quality outcome for the people who'll be living in those homes and the communities that they're in. And then we also recognise that it can bring wider benefits to the construction industry. I think that some of the constraints that we're seeing within the traditional build methods part of the industry are very real. We're seeing that in our construction programs, and I'm sure others are experiencing that. So we need to be able to get the benefits of both the traditional build methods and the offsite methods, just to meet the demand. And we have confidence that the offsite method can deliver for us. We've been using that for the last few years, and currently we've got about 15% of our build program, either under construction or in the design phase, use some kind of offsite manufacturing techniques. So we already know that these building homes can be built faster, and particularly installed on site faster, which is really important when you've got neighbours who we're disturbing with our construction. The quicker we can get in, get out, and more importantly, move customers in, the better. I think the other aspect is if you can move into a highly repeatable use of offsite, you get less variables. There's just streamlining of the whole process. And then, of course, there are other benefits which are also important to us. We're really trying hard to reduce our construction waste, and using offsite manufactured techniques, you've just got a built-in benefit there because you're controlling everything in a factory environment. And then there's other benefits. You know, we see health and safety benefits overseas where There are less people working in an on-site environment, out in the weather, and you're just able to control and manage the build process a lot more. So yeah, lots of reasons for us. We've been pretty clear that this is a direction of travel we want to take. We launched our offsite strategy at the end of last year, and in that we made a commitment that we wanted to scale up our use of offsite manufactured homes by about 20% a year. It's really important to us that that growth is sustainable, both for individual companies and for the sector as a whole. We work currently with about 18 of New Zealand's offsite manufactured suppliers, and we're engaging with probably double that. So, you know, we do want to talk to any suppliers out there who think they've got capacity and might be able to supply to us.
Hey, look, I've been dying to find out about this stuff. Part of your offsite strategy is using prefabricated bathroom and laundry pods, so you know, fully built. Whack them in. How does that work?
Yes, so this is something that's underway right now at Kāinga Ora, and it's really a research and development program. So it is real homes that we're building for people to live in. But what we've done is that we've looked at and we've used different combinations of offsite manufacturing technologies, and these have included something that is called bathroom pods, basically just a whole bathroom built off-site and then craned in and slotted into place within the apartment. And in this R&D program, we've used bathroom pods from a number of different suppliers. So New Zealand-based Concision here in Christchurch, where I am at the moment, Interpod, who are Sydney-based, and Sync, who are Melbourne-based. So they've all been included in a trial across 4 different build projects. And one of these, in Blockhouse Bay in Auckland, and built by Miles Construction, our build partner for that project. This is a 3-level apartment block. It's got 18 homes in it, completed last year. And each of the units, each of the homes has got a bathroom pod that was supplied by Concision. And then the project also incorporates something called cross-laminated timber panels. So those are 100% renewable timber panels. And it was really importantly for us as well, also the first project, our first OSM project that achieved the 7 home star rating. So what we're trying to do with these pilot projects is really evaluate and then evaluate these different technologies and combinations of build methods, learn the lessons, and then move them into other parts of our program. Right now for the bathroom pods, we're in the evaluation phase and really using that to make the decision about whether this is something we want to roll out into our wider program. And importantly, we're looking at it from certainly from a construction point of view, but also from the customer point of view. How are these working out for the customer? Are they any different from a bathroom which might have been built on site? And looking to make a really informed decision about our use of those in the future.
Okay, key lessons, key insights so far?
I think one of the first things that we've learned is to not try and fit a square peg into a round hole. So everything that we've all done in the housing delivery system or construction system in the past has been oriented towards building on site, a more traditional building approach. And when it comes to offsite manufacturing, what we've learned is you really need to start in a different place, particularly if you want to get those benefits that I was talking about earlier. So for us, a key insight has been to start with a standalone offsite manufactured program, and then to build our housing delivery system around that build methodology. There are just some really key differences in terms of the flow of the process, when you need to get the manufacturer or supplier of the homes involved in the process. And if you don't make some of those key moves early on, you really come unstuck, and all the benefits of time go out the window because you end up spending a lot of time going backwards through the process. I think one of the other things that's been a learning for us as part of government is that there really needs to be a whole of government, or certainly the parts of government that have a relationship and can benefit from OSM around this particular subject, and that we need to engage with industry, and we do this through Offsite New Zealand, which is the organisation that represents the offsite industry. And so we've been joining up with certainly Ministry of Education, who've had an offsite manufacturing program for a while in terms of the schools that they built. Department of Corrections and Department of Defence both have a need to build housing, and they're both using offsite to different levels. So we're bringing a joined up conversation between ourselves and with MB as the regulator, and they've got some really important work happening in terms of building regulations and offsite manufactured product. And with MSD, they've been looking at the skills aspect and training aspects in relation to OSM. So it's a really multi-dimensional conversation just within government, and then we need to be having that real partnership and collaboration approach with the sector, so that so that we can work collaboratively, and that the sector has confidence, particularly in terms of sometimes the really significant investments that need to be made in the factories and establishing the plant to produce these houses, and also to bring on and train staff. So we've learned that the conversation needs to be quite broad, that we need to be speaking directly to industry, but also to our colleagues in other parts of government. We think that there is really great potential for offsite manufactured homes to be a really big player in the future in the New Zealand market, but we want that growth to be really sustainable. It's really important to us that we're part of a successful long-term approach to offsite manufactured homes in the future, and we want to use the scale that we have through our housing programs to be a really positive and I think informed part of that. We want to be very intentional in terms of how we move this forward.
What else is in the future for Kāinga Ora around innovation? What's next?
Yeah, so there's a couple of really exciting things that I'd love to share with you in terms of what's coming up for us. And one of those is the partnership that we're developing with Callaghan Innovation. So we have a shared goal. We both want to see a lot more innovation happening and being supported in the residential construction industry. So we've decided to come together and work together on that. We both want to see both technical innovation and R&D, but also in terms of business model and the commercialization aspects of that innovation. I think we all agree that the industry has got some really significant challenges. Excuse me. And I think this isn't innovation just for the sake of some fun new things. This is innovation to really help us solve some of the challenges that we've got, and particularly around our move towards lower carbon homes. We need innovation in that space to help us get there cost effectively. So that's one thing. The other thing is a couple of our pilot projects, our newer pilot projects I just wanted to mention. One of those we call Beta Ventura, and that's because it's on the corner of Beta and Ventura Streets in Mangere in Auckland. So this is under construction at the moment, and it's certainly for Kāinga Ora, it's our first passive house project, and that's it's another of these 3-story, as we call them, 3-story walk-up apartment buildings, and we're targeting an 8 Homestar rating. And I think most excitingly, the impact that it's going to have on our customers in terms of what they need to spend on heating and cooling is just dramatically reduced. We've calculated an 85% reduction in heating costs, so just really significant. And then finally, our latest pilot project, and probably our biggest, definitely our biggest, which we call Ngā Kāinga Anamata, or Homes of the Future. And this project has 5 separate buildings, all built almost identically, but using different construction technologies. So one has is primarily cross-laminated timber. Then we have a more then we have a light timber frame. We have a precast concrete. We have a light gauge steel, and then we have a hybrid, which combines the light timber frame with the cross-laminated timber. And we're targeting a 9 Homestar rating with this one. And really, we're studying the heck out of it because we want to understand everything about how these different buildings perform, what they cost, how long they took us to build, the carbon and profile of all of them, the energy use profile, how the customers respond to them, and all of these aspects we're really keen to share with industry, because we can see we've got a really unique opportunity here to study a real building, a real construction process, and then these homes are obviously homes for people, and we really want to understand how they work for the people who live in them.
Oh, kia ora, Ryan. I feel as though we're going to have to come back to you in a year or so to find out about outcomes from these projects and your views on comparisons between the different methods. Anyway, finally today, Wafei Swillim, he's from 3D printed concrete specialist Qorox. Kia ora, Wafei.
Yeah, thanks for having me and for having this webinar.
So Qorox has some pretty lofty ambitions. They really want to revolutionise the construction industry through 3D printing. Wafei, tell us about the technology and why you brought it to New Zealand.
So I came across 3D printing in 2018, and main reason why I went and investigated 3D printing because I was very frustrated by how we build overall. I lived in 4 countries around the world, and all of them have the same problems. We're very slow, we are not efficient, we have always a bad impact on the environment, and we cannot, the way we build is not sustainable. So I came across 3D printing and I started to investigate it, and it took a lot of R&D, almost 2 years of R&D to get it compliant to New Zealand building standard and testing in New Zealand. And I see that this has a massive potential of helping to fill up the gap between the supply and the demand, either for housing or commercial builds, and also fill up a big gap in the civil and infrastructure.
And for the first time in New Zealand, I'm assured, Qorox has constructed a hybrid timber and concrete house with 3D printed concrete walls. Sounds a bit unreal almost, Wafei. Tell us about that.
So we have actually 2 houses. The first one was internal walls. It's a solar passive house that we did in Hoya. We completed this project. And the main reason why we use is because the walls are very unique and were more economical and faster than traditional builds. And there's another completed house, 43D printed house, internal and external walls and retaining walls that we started to print, and it will be in Parimo in Auckland. We got our building consents and we started to print the walls, and they already started to pour the slab. So the main advantage we're giving the client is that we are similar price point to traditional construction, but we're a lot faster. And we're able to do a lot of things that traditional builds are not able to do. Like we have curved walls, we have very unique design, and the client, if they try to do something similar with traditional builds, it would have been out of their budget and out of their affordability.
How does it actually work? Tell us about the technology.
So when we build houses or build commercial buildings or anything, we have 2 options. We can print the wall or the elements on site, or we can print them off-site. So what we do is that we print the walls, and these walls have structural cavities and insulation cavity for external walls, and for internal walls, it's just 2 layers. And this way we can have one wall that comes to site or printed on site that's completed, does not require any finishing from the inside or outside, and is very durable and waterproof. So what this gives is that the thermal mass of the concrete makes the house a lot more economical to heat and cool, and there's around 20% saving in energy consumption for heating a concrete house comparing to a timber framed house.
Now, obviously, this is seriously innovative stuff. How hard has it been to get it up and running in New Zealand? What sort of obstacles were there? How did you get over them?
Some of the challenges we faced were around how unique the building standard is in New Zealand. So a lot of the testings and the designs that were available that were done overseas were not applicable for New Zealand. So we had to reinvent the wheel a little bit. And the second thing is that the construction industry overall is one of these industries that when it's booming, nobody has time for innovation, and when it's bust, nobody has money for innovation. And also we're quite comfortable building the way we build, and the end result of that is there is no incentive for innovation. There's no people pushing the envelope. We're not trying to do more and more creative stuff. COVID have changed that a little bit because of the bottlenecks of the supply chain and the lack of resources and shortage of labor. All of this is putting pressure and forcing people to think outside of the box. So I believe that this will help us move forward, and we're getting more and more traction because every week I'm talking to new people. A lot more people are excited about the technology, and they see a big potential for it in the market and how it could help the construction industry.
So what's next? What do you think is the future of 3D printing technology in New Zealand construction?
I see 3D printers in the future working with builders to increase the productivity, the same way we have diggers, the same way you have nail guns. You can produce more with less people and have better impact on the environment. So what I see it is that it will not, because the technology is so versatile, we can do seawalls, we can do bridges, we can do retaining walls with it, we can do houses, we can do stormwater systems, we can do playgrounds, skate park ramps, landscaping, planters and seats. It is quite versatile. So I see it as that's going to help every sector of the industry become more efficient and become more productive with the little resources that they have. Being in New Zealand, that's far away in the world, our buying power is very, very weak. Our resources is quite limited. We don't have infinite number of immigrants that coming to the country like what happens in Europe and the United States. So we need to do more with the little that we have. And this will be helping to fill up this gap.
And given your experience, have you got any advice to others in the sector who are looking to champion this sort of innovative approach?
If I give advice to anyone is that you need to have a massive point of difference. You need to be going with something new, something that you believe that will have a fundamental change in the construction industry. And you have to look beyond what the building standard says. And you need to be able to not fight your way through it, but be resilient and expect it to take a lot longer than what you think it will be. And it goes a lot more than you think it will be. But if I can do it, anyone can do it. I'm not a rocket scientist or anything like that. It is just a matter of having a good idea and following through with it.
Oh, kia ora, and good luck. Thank you. Thank you to all our speakers today. And of course, thank you to you for watching. Hope you got some good stuff from it, maybe even some inspiration. Any questions, email the Accord. The address is on screen, or visit the website. And join us for the next in our series of Towards High Performance webinars. He ko ngā mai.